At first glance, the frontman of the Squid Games appears to be someone with absolutely no regard for human life. He runs this event where they put vulnerable people with huge debts into a game, but when you lose, you pay the price with your life. He kills anyone who breaks his rules, even his own staff, and he does it all without hesitation. But the man behind the mask is more complex than one might think. Hwang In-Ho's life hasn't been easy, and he wasn't always this way. Things changed him, events shaped his character, and that doesn't make what he does right, but it allows us to dissect his mind, and maybe put a logic to his evil. This is the dark psychology of the frontman. Born in the 1970s in South Korea, nothing in In-Ho's early life suggests any trace of evil. In fact, everything we know about him before the Squid Games points to the opposite. He has a younger half-brother named Hwang In-Ho, and at one point, In-Ho even donated a kidney to him, an act of deep selflessness and familial love.
너희 형은 자기 콩팥까지 떼서 널 살려줬는데.
After university, he joined the police force as a detective. He believed in duty, justice, and upholding the law. Over 14 years of service, he was decorated with numerous awards and built a respected career. During this time, he met the love of his life. They went on to get married, and for a while, it seemed like everything in his life was aligned: career, love, purpose. But in 2015, everything changed. His wife became pregnant, a moment that should have brought them joy. But at the same time, she was diagnosed with acute liver cirrhosis, fatal if untreated, and she needed an urgent and expensive liver treatment. In-Ho had no way to afford it, so desperate, he borrowed money from a criminal source. But when the department found out, they saw it as a bribe, and despite his spotless record, they fired him. With no job, no help, and a wife slowly dying, In-Ho had nowhere left to turn. That's when he entered the 28th Squid Game, a secret annual competition where 456 players compete in 6 childhood games for a prize of 45.6 billion won, roughly $31 million. But the twist? Losing the game means death. Each eliminated player adds 100 million won to the prize pot. In-Ho made it all the way through, and he actually won the games. He'd survived a terrifying set of events and become a billionaire overnight, but it was too late. By the time he emerged from the games, his wife and unborn child had already passed away. After losing the person he loved most, In-Ho would have been devastated, disoriented, and emotionally unstable. But instead of healing, he made a life-altering decision. He joined Oh Il-nam, the twisted creator of the Squid Games, and became his right hand, the frontman. It was his job to now run the games, masked, silent, and deadly, while Il-nam observed from the shadows. In-Ho became the face of death, the enforcer of the very system that once broke him. To carry out this role for years, overseeing the deaths of hundreds of desperate people, In-Ho had to detach from morality entirely. That kind of coldness doesn't come naturally. It's the product of unprocessed grief left to rot into something darker. This inability to confront his loss is what points to prolonged grief disorder, a condition where grief not only persists over time, but becomes the defining lens through which a person sees the world. PGD is marked by intense emotional pain, emotional numbness, bitterness, and a disconnection from life, all of which we see clearly in In-Ho. After his wife's death, he never attempts to return to a normal life. He isolates himself and lives in a small apartment, despite winning billions. He doesn't rebuild, connect, or even indulge. Money didn't heal him, it haunted him. His wife's death becomes the axis of every major decision he makes. Her condition was the reason he joins the games, and her death is the reason he stays. One of the key psychological turning points lies in the voting system. After every game, players can vote to either stop or continue. Based on how he behaves later, it's likely In-Ho would have voted to end the game, either after the first deaths or once he had enough to save his wife. But others around him kept voting to continue, driven by greed. That greed, in his mind, cost him everything. And so, he begins to harbor misplaced bitterness and anger. He blames the other players for delaying his exit, and by extension, for his wife's death, even though there's no evidence that leaving earlier would have saved her. That grief-fueled resentment mutates into ideology. He joins the game to punish these other greedy players, projecting his pain outward, mocking them for the very choices that he once made himself. Becoming the frontman is more than a job. It's a maladaptive coping mechanism. He ritualizes his trauma by recreating it over and over. But now he's the one pulling the strings. He no longer seeks joy, peace, or closure. Instead, he compares human life to horse racing and frames the deaths as inevitable and justified. He wears a mask not just to hide, but because there's nothing left underneath it. Despite all the wealth and authority, his life is hollow. He doesn't use his money, he doesn't form bonds, he doesn't move on. It's as if the moment his wife died, his life stopped too, and everything after that became mechanical. So yes, In-Ho shows clear signs of prolonged grief disorder, but his case is unique. His grief didn't isolate him completely, it mutated him. He didn't just fall apart, he rebuilt himself into something cold, structured, and cruel, not because he enjoyed it, but because he thought it was all he had left. 5 years later, he's running the 33rd Squid Game, and for the first time, we get to see what really lies behind the mask. In 2020, we see the Squid Games unfold, and for the first time, we witness how broken In-Ho has truly become. We're introduced to him as the frontman. He steps into the control room, signals the games to begin, and returns to his office where he pours a glass of whiskey, plays music, and watches the chaos unfold on a giant screen. As players are slaughtered in the first game, In-Ho barely reacts. He isn't sad, he isn't pleased, he just simply watches. It's hard to tell if he feels anything at all, and that silence is more terrifying than a scream. Throughout the games, he rarely intervenes directly. He delegates, monitors, and enforces from a distance. But when a player takes a young staff member hostage and forces him to remove his mask, that's when we see what In-Ho has become. That player commits suicide, and In-Ho, cold and composed, walks in and executes the boy on the spot. Not because he posed a threat, but because he removed his mask and broke a rule. This isn't the man we see in later flashbacks. There was once a time where In-Ho hesitated to kill even in self-defense, but now he carries out death like his administrative protocol. This is emotional desensitization, a symptom of prolonged exposure to violence and death. His trauma has numbed his reaction to suffering, allowing him to kill without hesitation or remorse. When he discovers that some of his staff are secretly harvesting organs and collaborating with Player 111, he becomes furious. Not because of the deaths and not because they're harvesting organs, but because they've broken the illusion of fairness. They were giving Player 111 tips and tricks to get past the next game, giving him that unfair advantage. In-Ho executes the staff involved, the doctor is also killed, and then their bodies are hung in the main hall as a warning to the remaining players. It's a disturbing moment, but it also reveals something deeper. In-Ho still clings to a warped version of justice. In his mind, the games must be fair, equal suffering for all. That moment that the balance is broken, he acts ruthlessly to restore it. This is our first major glimpse of his Machiavellianism, ruling through fear, using those bodies he hung up as a spectacle. He doesn't need to yell, he lets the violence speak for him. But then a threat emerges, one he didn't anticipate. He finds a bullet from a police weapon and an ID badge. His brother, Gi-Hun, has infiltrated the island. In-Ho tracks him down and they confront each other on a cliff, guns drawn. Gi-Hun shoots In-Ho in the shoulder. In-Ho, despite being wounded, orders his guards not to shoot back. He asks Gi-Hun to come with him, but when Gi-Hun refuses, In-Ho shoots him in the shoulder and watches him fall off the cliff into the sea. We later find out that In-Ho had arranged for Captain Park to rescue his brother and take him to a hospital, which tells us one thing: he never intended to kill him. The shot was for the staff, to maintain his image as a ruthless leader, but the rescue later was for the man he still loves like a brother. He still feels guilty afterwards, as we see him having a hallucination of his brother, asking him why. This is the first clear crack in the mask. For all his coldness, In-Ho's humanity isn't entirely gone. It's buried, repressed, but not dead. Afterward, he returns to oversee the final match between the last two players, Song Gi-Hun and Cho Sang-woo. Gi-Hun wins, and In-Ho handles the exit. He blindfolds Gi-Hun, drives him back to the city, and hands over a debit card containing 45.6 billion won. But on the ride home, a blindfolded Gi-Hun asks, why? In-Ho doesn't offer remorse. He doesn't justify. Instead, he compares the games to horse racing, where the rich place bets. Only this time, the horses are human. When Gi-Hun asks who he is, In-Ho says nothing. He gasses him unconscious, treating the entire nightmare like a dream, one where you either wake up from richer or you don't wake up from at all. This moment is a masterclass in moral disengagement. the psychological process where people justify harmful actions by reframing them as necessary, deserved, or not that bad. According to psychologist Albert Bandura, there are 8 mechanisms of moral disengagement, and In-Ho uses all of them. Moral justification in the way he frames death as fairness. He thinks they chose greed, I just enforce the consequences. Euphemistic labeling in how he calls the games horse racing. For him and the other upper class, the VIPs, for Il-Nam, death becomes entertainment. Advantageous comparison in how he looks upon those who voted to return. Their greed to him is worse than his violence. Displacement of responsibility is less common. He never blames Il-Nam or the system. He does own his own role. But there is some diffusion of responsibility. He implies players have free will. They could leave if they wanted. So it's not really his fault. Disregard or distortion of consequences in how he feels nothing watching people die. He calls it a dream. The pain is minimized, even erased. Dehumanization is clearly present in how players are referred to by numbers, not names. Their deaths are shown to VIPs like a betting game. And finally, blaming the victim. He punishes greedy players and even executes ones who break the rules, believing they deserve it. So yes, In-Ho displays extreme levels of moral disengagement, but here's the truth. He hasn't lost his morality. He's rewired to survive. He doesn't see himself as evil. He sees himself as essential. And the scariest part, he believes that what he's doing isn't just acceptable, it's logical. Over time though, we'll start to see the small cracks in that logic. A flicker of emotion, a buried conscience. But by then, the damage is done, and his life before the games will never be the same. A year after the 33rd Squid Game, In-Ho visits Il-Nam on his deathbed. He stands over the man who created the games, the man who turned him into what he is. And now, with Il-Nam gone, In-Ho has full control. At that point he could have ended the games, walked away, tried to shut it all down, but he doesn't. He's too far gone, too consumed, and he chooses to continue. Meanwhile, Gi-Hun, the winner of the 2020 game, is still haunted. Despite becoming a billionaire, he refuses to move on. He calls In-Ho and demands the games to be stopped. In-Ho simply warns him, get on the plane for your own good. But Gi-Hun doesn't board. He stays, and he plans to fight back. Gi-Hun re-enters the games, and In-Ho, realizing how dangerous he could be, a returning winner who knows the system, decides to intervene personally. He disguises himself as Player 1 under the fake name Hwang In-Ho and joins the games. But unlike others, his life is never truly at risk. He manipulates everything behind the scenes. During the first game, red light, green light, he doesn't even participate. During the first vote, he casts the final ballot to continue, a subtle echo of his own past, when others kept the game going and cost him everything. But now, he's doing it for entertainment. During the confrontation with Thanos, another contestant, In-Ho shows his combat skills and easily overpowers him, but doesn't kill him. It was only after Thanos threw a jab about children that In-Ho snaps.
아저씨, 밖에 나가서 함부로 나불대지 말고 집에 가서 아저씨 자식 새끼나 잘 키워.
뭐라 그랬네?
이 새끼한테 나라고. 그런 게지.
Those words seriously hit a nerve. His unborn child, the one he lost in 2015, resurfaces in his mind. For a moment, we see that he still feels, but as always, he buries it. Throughout the games, he keeps a close eye on Gi-Hun, gradually earning his trust. In the 6-legged pentathlon, he joins Gi-Hun's team, but he conveniently sets up the game order so that their team goes last. So if they fail, the staff can kill his teammates and he'll survive while the others die. A calculated move that shows his manipulation shine through, as he preaches fairness but doesn't let that be the case. During the third game, Mingle, it gets dark. At first he continues the trend of cheating, as he's able to just disappear and reappear and not face any consequences. But then In-Ho's teammate, Jung-Bae, eventually witnesses In-Ho brutally murder player 343 in cold blood, snapping his neck, killing him instantly. This kill isn't masked or from a distance like shooting. It isn't outsourced to staff. It's hands-on, personal, much like the killings In-Ho had to commit in the 2015 games. We're watching him repeat the cycle, not just physically, but emotionally. Gi-Hun then comes up with a plan to stop the games. He, Hwang In-Ho, and a few allies would ambush the guards. They carry it out and manage to kill many of them, and for a moment, it seems like they might succeed. But then comes the betrayal. In-Ho, still playing Hwang In-Ho, turns on his own team. He kills 2 of the players without hesitation and stares coldly at their dying bodies, attempting to fire more rounds into them. Then radios Gi-Hun and declares that they failed, staging his own death in the process, manipulating Gi-Hun fully, even using the gurgling of one of the men he shot to mimic Hwang In-Ho dying. It's just a psychological play. make Gi-Hun think that hope is dead, break his spirit, disappear and return as the frontman. He confronts Gi-Hun again, now masked, and asks mockingly. Then in the final act of cruelty, he executes Jung-bae, Gi-Hun's closest friend, right in front of him. As guards hold Gi-Hun back, he watches his last ounce of hope bleed out, and In-Ho, he just turns around and walks away. And it's here that In-Ho's true psychology becomes undeniable. This isn't about thrill, it isn't about chaos. This is Machiavellianism. Evil, but not for pleasure, for power and control. Niccolo Machiavelli said, "It's better to be feared than to be loved if you cannot be both." Machiavellianism is defined by strategic manipulation, emotional detachment, and a long-term focus on control. It's part of the dark triad of personality traits, but unlike psychopathy or narcissism, it's not impulsive or self-obsessed. It's cold, calculated, and rational. In-Ho wears multiple masks, both literal and psychological. As young Il, he plays the part of an ally. As frontman, he orchestrates deaths while sipping whiskey in silence. And when necessary, he switches identities without hesitation, a true manipulator. Every move he makes is deliberate. He punishes, deceives, and withholds not out of anger, but to maintain power. Sparing his brother while making it look like a fatal shot to everyone else is pure Machiavellianism. Protecting the secret, preserving optics, and maintaining emotional leverage. His bold view is dark and cynical. He tells Gi-Hun the games are like horse racing, people reduced to pawns, useful only for entertainment or elimination.
왜 이런 짓을 하는 거지?
경마 좋아하시죠? 당신들은 말입니다. 경마장의 말. 의외였어요.
In-Ho no longer sees humanity. He sees tools and obstacles. And for him, the ends always justify the means. If a few people have to die for the system to remain fair, so be it. He claims to uphold the rules, but when it suits him, he bends or breaks them to achieve his goals. So yes, In-Ho is a textbook high Machiavellian. He's not reckless, he's not emotional, he's systematically cruel. He doesn't act out of rage, he acts out of belief. He doesn't enjoy the pain, he just believes it's necessary. Back in the control room, In-Ho watches a completely broken Gi-Hun on camera. The man is defeated, asking aloud why he wasn't just killed. But In-Ho knows exactly why. He didn't kill Gi-Hun because he wanted to prove something. He wanted Gi-Hun to survive, to make it to the end again, to see how greed poisons everything. Because in In-Ho's mind, Gi-Hun is the version of himself before 2015, before the games, before the mask, before the ruin. He wants Gi-Hun to become like him, to break like he did. And if he can drag Gi-Hun down to that same darkness, then he'll feel justified, validated, less alone in his guilt. But deep down, he knows the truth. If Gi-Hun doesn't break, it forces In-Ho to question everything he's become. The VIPs return to watch the games and scoff at the idea that anyone will continue.
1.7 billion won is over $1 million. That's a lot of money for people like them. Suppose they want to stop here.
But In-Ho knows better. He's seen it before. They won't stop. Greed always wins, and he still mocks them for it, wearing that same bitter resentment from his own past.
The players down there have made it this far by killing each other. Most of them are thinking now, if more people die, how much more money can I get?
Then comes another twisted event. Player 222, a woman, gives birth during the... She injures her ankle and can't make it past one of the games, so Gi-Hun carries her baby forward, and she dies. Now with the mother gone, what does In-Ho do? Instead of removing the baby for safety, he assigns it a number and keeps it in the game.
How about having the baby play as player 222 in the next game?
Isn't that the mother's number?
Yes.
And what's your reasoning?
Soon, the players will vote whether to continue the game.
So what changes if the baby participates?
If the baby competes in place of her mother, both the voting and the game will be more interesting. I promise you.
At first it seems psychotic, an easy target to be killed for money, just something to add entertainment for the VIPs. But in In-Ho's warped morality, this makes sense. He believes everyone should have a fair chance, even a newborn. Meanwhile, Jun-Ho is back, searching for the island, still chasing the truth. In-Ho orders his undercover man, Captain Park, to kill any detectives who get close, including Jun-Ho. Park ends up killing nearly everyone on the boat, but Jun-Ho survives and kills him. And with his dying breath, Captain Park tells Jun-Ho,
내 왜 날 구해준 거야?
난 명령에 따라서뿐이야.
누가 당신한테 그런 명령을 했어?
널 어떻게든 살려놓으라고 했어.
And once again we're reminded, In-Ho still has a heart, but he buries it under the role he plays. Then something huge happens. In-Ho, still masked as the frontman, summons Gi-Hun for a private conversation. Gi-Hun confronts him, calling him sadistic for allowing a baby to be part of the games. In-Ho pushes back, saying he wants to help Gi-Hun and the baby. And then he puts a knife on the table. He tells Gi-Hun,
이 칼 가지고 숙소로 돌아가. 돌아와서 너와 아이를 죽이려는 그 쓰레기들을 죽여.
Gi-Hun asks why he's saying all of this. In-Ho removes his mask. He's young ill, alive. He apologizes for killing Jung-bae, but Gi-Hun grabs the knife, and In-Ho lets him. Go ahead, kill me, but you know my death won't change anything. They'll announce a new leader, and the games will go on. Then he gives him an out.
네가 그놈들을 다 죽이고 나면 참가자는 너와 아이 둘뿐이야. 다음 게임은 두 사람만으로는 할 수 없는 게임이야. 그럼 정해진 규칙에 따라서 게임은 여기서 중단이 돼. 너와 아이는 살아서 여길 나가게 될 거야. 내가 약속하지.
Gi-Hun turns and walks away. In-Ho watches him go, but asks, do you still have faith in people? Gi-Hun doesn't answer. And then, the flashback. Il-nam, the original host of the games, is speaking to him. Same room, same words, same knife.
그 쓰레기들을 죽여. 그대 자네한테 최선의 선택이야.
We see a younger In-Ho, terrified, trembling, desperate, kill a sleeping player by stabbing him in the throat. But when the player wakes up and In-Ho panics, he stabs him over a dozen times in the chest. The camera then pans across the room, at least 5 dead bodies, all killed in their sleep. This isn't just history, this is trauma reenactment, and In-Ho is trapped inside it. Trauma reenactment syndrome is a psychological phenomenon where people unconsciously recreate or reverse their traumatic experiences, often stepping into the role of the abuser or perpetrator. And In-Ho shows this perfectly. In 2015, he was the victim, told by Il-nam to kill or be killed, terrified, shaking, emotionally shattered. In 2024, he is Il-nam, calmly handing the knife to Gi-Hun, telling him to kill or be killed. He's not just reliving his trauma, he's replicating it, down to the smallest detail. By reversing roles from victim to abuser, In-Ho gains a sense of self-control. But this isn't healing, it's ritualized repetition disguised as leadership. He believes if Gi-Hun does it, then the cycle will make sense. His own descent will be justified. But when Gi-Hun doesn't, In-Ho is forced to confront the terrifying possibility. Maybe he didn't have to come this way. Back in the present, In-Ho watches Gi-Hun walk away from the killing, and for the first time, his face cracks. Not anger, not frustration, just sadness, regret, because Gi-Hun did what In-Ho couldn't. He resisted the darkness. He stayed human, and going into the final game, In-Ho knows it. He wasn't the strong one, Gi-Hun was. And that realization, not the games, not the rebellion, might be what finally begins to change him. In the final game, Gi-Hun makes the ultimate sacrifice. With only him and player 222's newborn baby remaining, the rules dictate that one must die. And so, Gi-Hun jumps from the top of the structure, giving his life so that the child might live. He knew he couldn't stop In-Ho, couldn't dismantle the system, but he could deny it one last cruelty. Frontman stands by and lets it happen. He doesn't intervene, he doesn't stop the game, he just watches. When the game ends and evacuation begins, In-Ho approaches Gi-Hun's lifeless body. He stares at it for a while. There's no smirk, no satisfaction, only a silent recognition that Gi-Hun had the strength to do what he never could, to give everything, not for money or survival, but for someone else, even after all hope was broken, to not fall into the darkness because of others. It's a sacrifice that likely cuts deep, because in that moment, In-Ho doesn't see Gi-Hun, he sees the man he used to be, the man he had the potential to be. He walks to the top of the structure and gently picks up the crying infant, the winner of the Squid Games. Just then, Jun-Ho appears, weapon drawn, the brother he tried to protect, now ready to kill him. In-Ho asks, why did you do it? But In-Ho doesn't answer. He simply walks away, baby in arms. Later, we see that In-Ho left the child and the full prize money in Jun-Ho's care, a quiet act of trust, and giving the baby a real chance to have a life, and also setting his brother up for life. And sometime after, in Los Angeles, In-Ho visits Gi-Hun's daughter. He lets her know her dad has passed away, and gives her a box containing her father's belongings, including his blood-stained Squid Game uniform and a credit card loaded with the prize money. She's now also set for life. And that act, like many of his final choices, is born from a very specific kind of pain, survivor's guilt. Survivor's guilt is the psychological torment that comes when someone lives through trauma or death, while others, especially loved ones, do not. It's not just grief, it's the unbearable question, why me? And In-Ho shows every sign of carrying that burden. The root of it lies in 2015, when he survived the games, but returned home to find his wife and unborn child had died. He didn't win, he simply outlived them. Since then, he's never tried to enjoy his life. He doesn't spend the 45.6 billion won he earned. He isolates in a tiny apartment. No rebuilding, no healing, no restart. This isn't stoicism, it's self-inflicted emotional punishment, a silent penance for surviving. Instead of escaping the system that destroyed him, he'd become a part of it, running the games again and again, as if to say, let the world see how greedy people really are. I saw it, now they should too. In-Ho doesn't kill for power, he kills to prove a point, that humanity is rotten, and maybe always was. But there's something different about how he treats the baby. When player 222 dies during childbirth, he doesn't remove the baby from danger, he keeps her in the game. And like I said, at first it felt twisted, but in the end, he rigs things just enough so that she can win. And when he places her in Jin-Ho's care, it doesn't feel like control, it feels like redemption, or at least a symbolic atonement, a way to undo the one thing he's never forgiven himself for, not saving his own child. This isn't redemption though, it's compensation, a quiet apology from the man who knows he's too far gone, but still hopes someone else gets the chance to live. His final act, delivering Gi-Hun's bloodied uniform and prize money to his daughter, mirrors what he wishes someone had done for him, to make the pain mean something, to give the sacrifice value. In-Ho is haunted not just by loss, but by the fact he survived and still let the system win. Deep down, I don't think he wants to run the games anymore, but he doesn't believe he deserves to walk away either. And tragically, his worldview might be right. The number of selfish, greedy people will always outnumber the selfless ones like Gi-Hun. In-Ho has accepted this, given up on being good. He's just fulfilling the role that grief and guilt carved out for him. As the final scene unfolds, we see In-Ho in Los Angeles. He drives past a new recruiter, already luring someone else into the next game. In-Ho stares blankly, as it shows that no matter how many Gi-Huns there are, or how many old versions of In-Ho, the system survives. The Squid Games continue, and In-Ho, the man who once joined to save a life, no longer believes it can be stopped.